Kyoto, 1638. A master swordsman stood before his student and asked a question that would break everything the young warrior thought he knew. If you must think before you strike, you have already died. So tell me, how does a dead man win a duel? The student's mind raced with answers. Strategy, speed, technique. Every answer was wrong, because the greatest warriors in history didn't think their way to victory. They thought their way into paralysis, and then they learned to stop. Here's what nobody tells you about overthinking. It's not intelligence, it's fear wearing a mask of wisdom. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The Warrior Who Couldn't Strike. Kenshin was 17 when shame found him in the dojo courtyard. He'd been training for 9 years. 9 years of sword forms, meditation, studying the classics. His technique was flawless. His understanding of strategy was beyond his years. Masters from neighboring dojos spoke of his potential. But Kenshin had a problem that no amount of knowledge could fix. He couldn't stop thinking. During sparring sessions, his mind became a storm. What if he feints left? Should I counter high or low? What's my distance? Is my stance correct? What will Master Hayato think if I lose? By the time he chose an action, the moment had passed. His opponent had already struck. Today was different. Today wasn't practice. Across from him stood Takeo, a visiting student from a rival dojo. Younger, less experienced, technically inferior in every measurable way. The duel began. Takeo moved with zero hesitation. A simple overhead strike, predictable, textbook. Kenshin saw it coming. He saw everything coming. In his mind, he calculated 3 different counters, each with branching possibilities. His brain was a chess master analyzing infinite futures. And while he was analyzing, Takeo's bokken struck his shoulder. The watching students murmured. This shouldn't have happened. They reset, bowed, began again. This time, Kenshin told himself to act faster. Don't overthink, just move. But don't overthink is itself a thought, and that thought created another thought. Am I overthinking right now? Which created another. Why can't I just stop thinking? Takeo struck him again, and again. By the 5th exchange, Kenshin wasn't even defending properly. He was drowning in his own mind, paralyzed by the 1,000 strategies that prevented him from executing even one. Master Hayato called the match. Takeo bowed, respectful but clearly confused how someone of Kenshin's reputation could be so frozen. That night, Kenshin sat alone in his quarters, staring at his hands. Hands that knew every technique. Hands that had trained thousands of hours. Hands that refused to move when it mattered. I'm a coward, he thought. I'm disguising fear as caution, strategy as intelligence. The next morning, Master Hayato summoned him. You will leave this dojo, the master said. Kenshin's heart dropped, expelled, his shame complete. You will go to Mount Hiei. There is a temple there, a Zen master named Dokuro. He specializes in... Hayato paused, choosing his words carefully. Breaking brilliant minds. Master, I don't understand. You think too much, Kenshin, and thinking has made you useless. Dokuro will teach you what I cannot. How to empty the mind completely. This isn't a punishment. It's the only path forward for someone like you. Someone like you. The words stung because they were true. Kenshin bowed. How long will I be gone? Until you learn to stop asking questions like that. Chapter 2. Mushin, the mind of no mind. 3 days later, Kenshin climbed the stone steps to Shorinji Temple. The main hall was empty except for an old monk sitting in perfect seiza, so still he could have been a statue. Kenshin bowed. "Master Dokuro, I was sent by... I know why you're here." The monk's eyes remained closed. "You think too much. Sit." Kenshin sat across from him. "Tell me," Dokuro said. "What is thought?" Kenshin began to answer, an intelligent response forming about cognition, awareness, mental processing. "Stop. That was thought explaining thought. I asked what thought is, not what you think about thought." Kenshin fell silent. "You cannot use a knife to cut itself," Dokuro continued. "You cannot use thought to understand thought. You can only observe it. And in that observation, you discover something the greatest warriors knew. Thought is not your ally. It is the opponent you fight in every moment." The monk finally opened his eyes. They were disturbingly clear, as if nothing stood between perception and reality. Miyamoto Musashi wrote, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." Do you know what he meant? Kenshin started to answer. Rhetorical. He meant you're thinking about yourself, your worth, your skill, your reputation, is the weight that drowns you. When you stop thinking about yourself, you become light enough to move. Dokuro stood, walked to a wall scroll. 2 kanji in perfect calligraphy. Wu-sin, Mushin, no mind, not mindless. That's stupidity. No mind means mind like water. Thoughts arise, you observe them, they dissolve. Nothing sticks, nothing accumulates. He turned back to Kenshin. Right now, your mind is like a pond where you've thrown 1,000 stones. The water is so disturbed you can't see anything clearly. Every thought creates ripples that collide with other ripples. Chaos masquerading as analysis. Mushin is learning to stop throwing stones, to let the water become still. And when it's still, you see reality with perfect clarity, not filtered through thought, not delayed by analysis, just pure, immediate awareness. Kenshin felt something resist inside him. But Master, without thought, how do I make decisions? How do I strategize? You're confusing thought with awareness. A master swordsman doesn't think about blocking. His body responds before thought forms. That's not instinct. That's awareness so immediate that thought is too slow to participate. The Zen masters have a saying, first thought, best thought. But even better than first thought, no thought. Just action arising from perfect presence. Dokuro returned to his seat. You will stay here for 3 months. Every day we will train your mind to stop. Not through force. You cannot force the mind to be empty. Through observation. Through learning to watch thoughts without believing them, without following them, without becoming them. And then I'll be able to act without overthinking. Then you'll discover that the you who overthinks is itself a thought. And when that dissolves, what remains is what was always there beneath the noise, pure awareness, no hesitation, no second guessing, no paralysis. The samurai called it Mushin. The Taoists called it Wu-Wei. Different words, same truth. The mind that doesn't interfere with itself is the mind that cannot be defeated. Chapter 3. 30 Days of Stillness. Week 1 was torture. Kenshin sat in the meditation hall for 6 hours daily. The instruction was simple. Watch your thoughts. Don't follow them. Don't push them away. Just watch. Within 60 seconds, his mind exploded. Am I doing this right? This is boring. How long has it been? My leg hurts. I should adjust. No, I shouldn't move. But it really hurts. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. What if I fail here too? Master Hayato will... You're thinking about thinking. Dokuro's voice cut through. Return to breath. Kenshin tried, focused on his breathing. In, out, in, out. Am I breathing correctly? Should it be deeper? What if I'm doing zazen wrong? Thinking, Dokuro said quietly, walking past. This continued for hours, days. Every time Kenshin thought he'd found stillness, another thought would arise to announce, I've found stillness, which was itself the end of stillness. By day 5, Kenshin was ready to quit. I can't do this, master. My mind won't stop. Correct? Your mind won't stop. The question is, do you have to obey it? That question hung in the air. You think you are your thoughts. This is the fundamental delusion. You are not the voice in your head. You are the awareness that hears the voice. When a thought arises, I'm failing at this, and you believe it, you've identified with the thought. But if you observe it, there's a thought that says, I'm failing. You've created distance, and in that distance, freedom exists. Week 2 brought the first breakthrough. During morning zazen, Kenshin's mind was particularly chaotic. Worry about his training, memories of past failures, planning for future redemption. The usual storm. And then, for perhaps 3 seconds, the storm stopped. Not because he forced it. It just stopped. In that gap of silence, Kenshin experienced something he'd never felt. Pure awareness without content. No self, no worry, no time, just presence. The thoughts returned immediately, but now he knew silence was possible. It wasn't theoretical. He'd tasted it. You've touched it, Dokuro said that evening. Now you'll spend the rest of your life learning to live there. Not permanently. That's neither possible nor desirable. But to access it when needed. In battle. In crisis. In any moment where thought would be too slow. Week 3 introduced walking meditation. Overthinking isn't just mental, Dokuro explained. It's physical. Your body is tense, holding patterns of worry. We'll teach it to move without mental interference. They walked in a circle around the meditation hall. 1 step per breath. Complete attention on the physical sensation. Heel touching ground, weight shifting, toe lifting. Whenever Kenshin's mind wandered, planning the afternoon, replaying this morning, he'd notice he'd lost connection with his body. Thought pulls you into past or future, Dokuro said. The body exists only now. When you're fully in the body, overthinking becomes impossible. They can't occupy the same space. By week 4, Kenshin noticed something remarkable. During sword practice, brief moments would emerge where his body moved without his mind's permission. Dokuro would call an attack, and Kenshin's counter would happen before thought could form. It was like watching someone else move his limbs, effortless, immediate, appropriate. That's Mushin, Dokuro confirmed. You stopped thinking about defending, so your body defended. The mind that doesn't interfere is infinitely faster than the mind that analyzes. But then Kenshin would notice it happening, get excited. I'm doing it, and immediately the overthinking would return. Excitement about no mind is still mind, Dokuro reminded him. The goal isn't to achieve something. Achievement is thought. The goal is to stop trying to achieve, to simply be, completely ordinary, completely present, nothing special. If you're beginning to understand how stillness could transform not just your actions, but your entire relationship with thought, walk this path with us. This isn't ancient history locked away. This is living practice, available now, every week, for those ready to stop thinking and start being. Chapter 4. Warrior Psychology. Month 2 began with a teaching session. All the temple students gathered as Dokuro stood before them. Tonight, I'll explain why overthinking isn't just unpleasant, it's biologically destructive, and why Mushin isn't mysticism. It's your brain functioning as it was designed to, before thought corrupted it. He walked slowly, hands behind his back. Modern understanding of the mind, which you'll learn about in centuries to come, will discover something the Zen masters knew through direct experience. Your brain has 2 modes. The first is called the default mode network. This is the voice in your head, the narrator, the one that says, "I am Kenshin, I'm worried about failing, I need to prove myself." This mode is excellent for planning, reflecting, constructing identity. But here's the problem. For most people, this mode never turns off. Even when immediate action is required, the narrator keeps narrating. Should I block left? What if he counters? Am I doing this right? In a duel, this delay is death. In life, it's paralysis disguised as caution. Kenshin leaned forward. This explained everything he'd experienced. The second mode, Dokuro continued, has no name in your time, but in the future, they'll call it the task positive network. This is pure action. No narrator, no self-commentary, just awareness responding to reality in real time. Athletes will call it the zone. Warriors call it Mushin. Same phenomenon. The thinking mind goes offline, and a faster, more intelligent system takes over. He paused for effect. Miyamoto Musashi lived in this state, not because he was born special, because he trained the narrator to be quiet. He wrote, "In strategy, your spiritual bearing must not be any different from normal. Both in fighting and in everyday life, you should be determined though calm." Determined though calm. That's Mushin. Action without anxiety. Response without hesitation. A student raised his hand. "Master, if we stop thinking, don't we become mindless, reactionary?" Excellent question. No, you become responsive instead of reactive. Reactive is when thought hijacks you, someone insults you, and before you can observe, you're angry. That's thought controlling you. Responsive is when awareness precedes action. Someone insults you. You feel the impulse to anger arise. You observe it. You choose whether to act on it. That choice happens in the space before thought solidifies. The Stoics, philosophers far from here, understood this. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But he might have gone further. It's not that your reaction matters, it's that you have the space to choose your reaction. And that space only exists in Mushin. When thought runs constantly, reaction is automatic. When thought is silent, choice becomes possible. Dokuro drew a circle in the sand with his staff. The thinking mind is like this circle, closed, self-referential, endlessly analyzing itself. Thought thinking about thought, thinking about thought. A loop. Mushin is the opening of the circle. Awareness that includes thought but isn't limited to it. You can think when thinking is useful, planning a journey, solving a problem. But you can also set thinking aside when immediate action is required. Most people cannot set thinking aside. They're addicted to it. Even when thought is clearly making things worse, anxiety spiraling, analysis leading nowhere, they can't stop. This is why we train, not to eliminate thought, to break its tyranny. He looked directly at Kenshin. You came here because thought paralyzed you in combat, but thought paralyzes everyone in different ways. Some can't have conversations without rehearsing what to say. Some can't sleep because they're replaying the day. Some can't enjoy this moment because they're worried about the next. All the same disease, believing that thought is consciousness itself. But consciousness is much larger than thought. Thought is just one tool, and right now, for most people, the tool is using them. That night, Kenshin meditated on a koan Dokuro had given him. What was your original face before you were born? The question made no logical sense. That was the point. Logic was thought. The koan was designed to exhaust thought, to drive the mind to the edge where thought ends and awareness begins. After 2 hours of mental struggle trying to think his way to the answer, Kenshin's mind finally gave up, and in that surrender, he understood. The original face wasn't something to find. It was what remained when you stopped looking. Chapter 5, The Duel of No Thought, Month 3. Master Dokuro announced, "Tomorrow, you will duel Goro." Kenshin knew Goro, a senior student renowned for his speed and precision. Kenshin had watched him fight. Goro was exceptional. Old Kenshin would have spent the night strategizing, visualizing counters, planning approaches. New Kenshin simply sat, breathed, watched thoughts arise. What if I lose? What if 3 months of training meant nothing? He observed these thoughts like clouds passing through sky, acknowledged them, didn't follow them. By morning, his mind was quiet. The duel began at dawn in the temple courtyard. They bowed, assumed kamae stance. Goro moved first, a testing strike, quick, controlled. And here's what happened. Kenshin's body responded before his mind registered the attack. No thought, no calculation, just movement. He deflected, countered, not from strategy, from pure awareness of the moment. Goro increased speed, combination attacks, the kind of complexity that would have frozen old Kenshin in analysis paralysis. New Kenshin moved like water. When Goro struck high, Kenshin was already low. When Goro feinted left, Kenshin didn't bite. His body didn't respond to intention, only to actual movement. 3 minutes in, an eternity in combat, Goro made a mistake, overcommitted to a strike, left himself open for a fraction of a second. Kenshin's bokken touched Goro's throat. Light, controlled, victory, silence. Then Goro lowered his sword, bowed deeply. That was different. You weren't fighting me. You were just there. Kenshin bowed back, but he understood what Goro meant. He hadn't fought. Fighting requires a fighter, a self thinking about winning, losing, reputation. That self had been absent. There was only awareness, body, moment, no separation, no hesitation. Master Dokuro approached. "Tell me what you learned." Kenshin considered his words carefully. "When I stopped trying to win, I stopped creating the conditions for losing. The thinking mind wants victory, but wanting creates tension. Tension creates hesitation. Hesitation creates defeat. When there's no want, no thought about outcome, there's just response to what is. And what is always manageable. Dokuro nodded once. You're beginning to understand. But this was a controlled duel. Friendly stakes. What happens when the stakes are real? When fear isn't hypothetical? When your life depends on silence? That's your next test. Chapter 6. Deep Training Arc. Dokuro sent Kenshin to a hermitage higher on Mount Hiei, accessible only by a narrow path carved into cliff face. You'll spend 30 days alone. No instruction, no companionship. Just you and your mind. This is where most students fail, not because the training is harder, but because there's no distraction from their own thinking. You'll discover whether you've truly learned Mushin, or whether you've just learned to perform it when a master is watching. The hermitage was a single room, sleeping mat, small altar, nothing else. The first night, Kenshin sat in meditation, and his mind immediately filled the silence. What am I supposed to be doing? Am I doing this right? What if I waste these 30 days? What if I return and I've regressed? Maybe I should practice sword forms. No, Dokuro said, just sit. But sitting feels like doing nothing. Am I supposed to feel something? I don't feel anything. Should I? He caught himself, smiled slightly. The thinking mind was trying to regain control, filling silence with noise, creating problems to solve so it would seem necessary. Kenshin labeled it planning, worrying, doubting, and returned to breath. This pattern continued for days. Every moment of silence, thought would rush in to fill it. But slowly, Kenshin noticed something. The thoughts were remarkably repetitive. Same worries, same questions, same mental loops. It was like watching a broken record. The mind had maybe 10 favorite thoughts, and it just rotated through them endlessly, pretending each time that they were new, important, urgent. I might be failing at this practice. I should be more disciplined. What if I'm wasting time? Did I offend Dokuro by asking that question last week? Around and around, the same 10 thoughts, wearing different costumes. By day 15, these thoughts became almost comical. Oh, there's the "am I wasting time" thought again. Hello, old friend. The identification broke. He wasn't these thoughts. These thoughts were just weather patterns in the space of awareness. Day 20 brought a different challenge. Kenshin was walking the perimeter of the hermitage when a memory surfaced. His father's death, the grief he'd never fully processed, the guilt about not being there. The emotion was so strong he had to sit down. Old Kenshin would have pushed it away. Don't think about that. Focus on training, or he would have drowned in it. I'm a terrible son. I failed him. New Kenshin did neither. He sat with the grief, felt it fully, didn't add story to it, didn't try to fix it, didn't analyze why he felt this way. Just, grief exists. Allow it. And something remarkable happened. The grief moved through him, like weather, intense, then fading. And beneath it, he found something unexpected, compassion. For his younger self, who was scared. For his father, who died before they could speak. For the human condition that includes loss. The grief didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling him. This, he realized, was Mushin applied to emotion, not suppressing feeling, allowing feeling without being hijacked by it. By day 30, Kenshin had touched something the texts described, but he'd never believed. True silence. Not the absence of sound. The absence of compulsive thought. He could sit for hours, and thoughts would arise occasionally, brief, functional, then dissolving. No mental commentary, no narrative, just awareness, presence, space. It felt like waking from a lifelong dream. When Dokuro came to retrieve him, the master studied his face for a long moment. "You've changed." "Yes." "How?" "I discovered that most of what I called me was just repeated thought patterns. And when those patterns go quiet, what remains is simpler, clearer, still." Dokuro smiled, the first time Kenshin had seen it. "Good. Now we'll see if that clarity survives real chaos." Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. Kenshin returned to Kyoto after 6 months away. Master Hayato greeted him with unusual seriousness. "A ronin named Teshin has challenged our dojo. He's fought 12 duels in the past year, killed 9 men. I'm assigning you to accept his challenge." Kenshin felt his body respond, elevated heartbeat, tension in shoulders, fear. But this time, he observed the fear, didn't identify with it, didn't let it create thought spirals. When? 3 days. Old Kenshin would have spent those 3 days strategizing, analyzing Teshin's previous fights, planning contingencies. New Kenshin spent them in silence, sitting, walking, moving through sword katas with complete presence, not preparing to win, preparing to be present. The day arrived. Teshin was waiting in the duel grounds, massive, scarred, eyes like a predator who'd killed so often, it no longer registered as significant. "You're the one Hayato sends? A boy?" His voice carried contempt. Kenshin said nothing, bowed formally. Teshin didn't bow back, drew his katana, and Kenshin felt it immediately, the old pattern trying to activate. He's bigger, stronger, more experienced. What if I die here? What if... He observed the thoughts, labeled them. Fear, planning, doubt, returned to body. Breath, moment. Teshin attacked, fast, brutal. A downward cut designed to end the duel immediately. Kenshin's body moved, not from thought, from pure awareness of angle, distance, timing, sidestep. Teshin's blade cut air, reset. Teshin attacked again. Combination strike, high, low, horizontal. Kenshin's mind was utterly silent. No commentary, no analysis, just movement responding to movement. He could see in Teshin's eyes the exact moment the larger man realized something was wrong. His opponent wasn't reacting like others had. No fear, no tension, just presence. This unnerved Teshin more than any counterattack could. 5 minutes in, Teshin was breathing hard, frustrated. 7 minutes, and he made the mistake. Overcommitted to a diagonal strike, left his center exposed. Kenshin's bokken touched Teshin's throat. Complete silence. Then the magistrate's voice. "Victory to Hayato Dojo." Teshin stood frozen. "How?" Kenshin considered the question. "You fought me. I didn't fight you. I was just here. When you struck, I moved. No thought between stimulus and response. That emptiness is faster than any strategy, because strategy is thought, and thought is too slow for combat." Chapter 8. The Warrior Truth. 10 years later. Kenshin stood in his own dojo, watching a young student spar. Technically brilliant, every form perfect, and losing because he couldn't stop thinking. After the match, Kenshin called him over. "Do you know why you lost?" The student looked down. "I overthought it." "Yes. Overthinking is fear pretending to be preparation. Your mind creates endless scenarios because if you're analyzing, you're not acting. And if you're not acting, you can't fail. But in that protection from failure, you guarantee it." Kenshin walked to the wall scroll, Wusin, Mushin, no mind. This separates warriors who think about fighting from warriors who simply fight. The greatest lie your mind tells you is that thought equals intelligence, that more analysis creates better decisions. Sometimes it does, when planning, building, solving complex problems. But in the moment of action, thought is the obstacle. The student listened, resistant. Kenshin recognized it. He'd been that student once. "I'm not asking you to believe. I'm asking you to observe. For 1 week, watch your mind. Notice how often you're thinking about what just happened or what might happen next. Notice how rarely you're actually here. That observation is the beginning." The student bowed and left. Kenshin smiled slightly. He'd once been that student, brilliant, paralyzed, drowning in his own mind. Then he'd learned what the ancient warriors knew. The quieter your mind becomes, the more powerful your presence. Not through force, through stillness, not through more thinking, through the end of compulsive thought, not through becoming someone new, through removing everything you never were. The thinking mind is a tool, a useful one, but most people never put the tool down. Mushin is learning to set the tool aside, to exist in the space before thought, to move from awareness instead of analysis. And in that space, you discover life becomes immediate. Fear still arises, but doesn't control you. Decisions become clearer. Action becomes effortless. This isn't mysticism. It's the natural state of consciousness before thought convinced you it was necessary for every moment. The mind that overthinks is a mind at war with itself. The mind that rests in awareness is a mind that cannot be defeated. Not because it's stronger, because there's no opponent left to fight. This teaching continues, not locked in ancient temples, but alive wherever warriors choose presence over thought. Walk this path, not with belief, with observation, not with effort, with release. The silent samurai doesn't think less. He thinks when thought serves and stops when action is required. And in that discernment lies freedom.